Biological and clinical studies on ionized water. This is from the literature, and then later I have some of my own data. So this is the best studied structured water in the literature. That's one reason I'm presenting it. There are many others, and there are many claims out there, and I show me the beef. Show me third-party laboratories that have done the research that substantiates how something structures water and has beneficial effects. That's why I'm presenting this, because it has 50 to 100 papers in the English language alone and a lot more in Asian languages that I don't read, because the water is more heavily known and used in Russia and Asia than it is in the West. So here's a paper. Scavenges active oxygen species and protects DNA from oxidative damage. That's important. And it's done in Japan, but happens to be in English. Here's a paper, Ionized alkaline water prevents oxidative cleavage of proteins. Another one. And these are all peer-reviewed papers from the medical and scientific literature. Animal studies show prolonged lifespan. Let me show you this. This was done in Texas by Dr. Fernandez. He looked at different strains of mice, and he fed the mice the ionized alkaline water from birth, and he tried it at two different pHs, pH 9.5 and pH 10.0. How do you do that? Well, you have a stronger electrolysis, more electrode plates to get the stronger water, which is more alkaline and has a higher ORP. And then he found, compared, these are different mouse strains. So he's comparing the lifetime of a mouse, which is about 225 days in this strain, fed just tap water, and what happens when the mice are fed water at pH 9.5? Well, they live more days, and it becomes significant, especially at pH 10 in this strain. It was a little less significant in this strain. But there you see, in mammals, it's enhancing length of life. That's important. What else do we know about lifespan? Here's something on I do have another paper on it. Let's see. This is by Fernandez. He looked to see what's going on that lifespan may be increased. And he found reduced peroxide levels in the blood serum, increased enzyme that's a key detoxifying enzyme, superoxide dismutase. Superoxide is the ion O2 with a minus charge. Okay, so that's a big free radical that wants to do damage in your body. And the enzyme superoxide dismutase breaks it down and neutralizes it. And that enzyme then is increased in activity in mice drinking the ionized alkaline water compared to tap water. So it's breaking down these free radicals in living bodies, which are the result of ordinary metabolism. So superoxide dismutase is known to be key to lifespan regulation, and here's a paper on this. Superoxide, first of all, is the most abundant reactive oxygen species, ROS. I'm going to use that word throughout this lecture. So when we have reactive oxygen species, these things can damage us, and they have to be contained. They go on in the mitochondria. The one reason that the mitochondria have a convoluted system of membranes to try to contain it. But then we learn things like glyphosate is disturbing those membranes, disturbing the tight gap junctions, etc. So these free radicals then get out, and they're also in the bloodstream to some extent. But we want to nip them in the bud because they damage biomolecules, they do oxidative damage that are correlated with aging, and the SOD is one of the key enzymes that neutralizes them, catalyzes the breakdown of superoxide into hydrogen peroxide in water, and then there are peroxidases, enzymes that break down that peroxide and further neutralize this whole waste problem of oxygen metabolism. So when we see enhanced activity of SOD, we know that oxidative damage can be reduced, and this could be a possible modus operandi for why those mice live longer. So now here's another study on longevity. This is on C. elegans. It's a worm that's well studied in biology, not a common worm in the soil or anything. It's a very tiny thing. And they found that it extends the lifespan also of that worm, again considered to be due to its scavenging action of free radicals. And most of these studies were not done in the United States, they're done abroad. Now, what about clinical studies. Here's some literature on patients with kidney disease. And again, these are short-term studies, like looking at sick people who drank the water for 30 days. What happens to kidney patients who are undergoing hemodialysis? So this is kind of end-stage kidney disease. And it's well known that hemodialysis, just the process of getting it, increases reactive oxygen species. And that's one of the causes of death in these patients. But drinking the ionized alkaline water fraction reduces the reactive oxygen species. And it also reduced blood inflammatory markers in kidney patients, C-reactive protein and interleukin-6. 2 markers of inflammation went down. That's a very good thing, because chronic inflammation, especially in a population like this with chronic disease, is actually one of the underlying factors of chronic disease, is the turning on of an inflammatory pathways in the body and the making of C-reactive protein and interleukin-6. So anytime we can nip chronic inflammation in the bud, we've paved the way for greater health and longevity. So that's 30 days of just drinking water. I mean, there haven't really been long-term studies on humans. I've been drinking the water for 20 years, and I have to say my blood parameters are perfect, and I'll show you some pictures of blood. Also, how my blood looks compared to my age group is another thing. Here's studies on diabetes. Reactive oxygen species is very high in diabetes. Diabetes is almost like a disease of faster aging than the normal population, than the healthy population. So besides the blood sugar effects and circulatory issues, etc., that is a fact that ROS is a big problem in diabetics, and it's also involved in progressive pancreatic dysfunction. So scavenging of reactive oxygen species in diabetics would be very important to help control diabetes. And here's a study on diabetic animals. So they have mice models of diabetes type 1, a genetic diabetes, and metabolic syndrome and diabetes type 2 mice. And the ionized water fed to them improved insulin sensitivity in both diabetic mice type 1 and 2 and reduced blood glucose. No insulin here. So, studies on diabetic patients. This was an uncontrolled study. It was a rather large study though. 411 type 2 diabetics, mean age 71.5, drank ionized alkaline water for up to 2 liters a day for over 6 days. Very short-term study. What happens? 45% showed reduced blood glucose. Oh my God. In just less than a week of drinking this water. Improved cholesterol and creatinine levels. And 70% showed decreased reactive oxygen species in the blood. This is big. Everybody should be drinking this water. Diabetes is epidemic in what we know, and it's only getting worse, especially type 2.